Hello and welcome to Current Wave. I'm your host, Ayla Wayman, and in this podcast, we meander through our shared delusions and stumble into ethereal shit talking as we dive into the waves of the human experience. I'm so grateful to have you here. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope that you enjoy the ride. Hello. I wanted to drop in and share something that I have been studying and practicing that I found really helpful. And it's interesting because the more I am diving into healing work and really subtle modalities, I've learned that I work on very, very subtle levels. That's where things accumulate for me personally. And the more you clear out the big stuff, the more tuned to the more subtle layers you're able to. So, we have like maybe big T traumas. We have the big patterns in our life that might be disrupting us or keeping us from what we really want. And as we start to work with those patterns, as we start to shift things and change things and step into greater levels of alignment, the subtle layers become ever more important. And so very small things will start to impact you in bigger and bigger ways because you've cleared out so much of the big stuff that it gets into the more granular. It gets into the hidden things, the things that might be blind spots, the aspects that could be harder for you to see. And ultimately, it's so amazing to work in those subtle realms, but it can be tricky because it feels very subtle. It's very gentle. It's not overt. It's a lot more covert. And that just brings a certain deeper level of awareness and attention if you are still wanting to work with those subtle ways and work with those subtle parts. So one of the tactics and experiences that I'm bringing some attention and study to right now is really coming into the body, number one. And the body is funny because I feel like it's often the first avenue that we tap into on our healing journeys. Often we start to access emotional healing through the physical realm and kind of like the low-hanging fruit of the physical realm. So a lot of people start their healing journey either with finding yoga, right? That's like a big one. Potentially just vinyasa or sometimes some deeper versions of yoga, kundalini, some of the other lineages. But yoga is a really big one. And then also food stuff. I also think there's a huge correlation between emotional challenges and food sensitivity or autoimmune disease or autoimmune challenges or sort of like those, celiac, Hashimoto's, thyroid disorders, hormone challenges, especially in women. So we approach our healing from this very physical realm, right? Maybe you find out you're allergic to gluten, or maybe you're having a lot of digestive issues, have like IBS or a dairy sensitivity, a dairy allergy, gluten allergy, sugar issues. You're trying to find solutions in the realm of food and nutrition and nourishment. And that brings you into place where you start to work on the physical, and then you really tap into the deeper layers, the mental, the spiritual, the emotional. And then that journey usually brings you to the next step and the next and the next. And it starts with that physical point, and then it goes into these other realms. And then at a certain point, what I'm finding happens, you sort of go into the mind, you go into the emotions, you go into the spiritual. And then depending on the path you take, because there's so many paths and so many lineages, then I often find we come back to the physical at a certain point. And when we come back to the physical, we're often working with it in a very different way. So, for example, I've done so much healing and so much work over the last few years that actually my gluten sensitivity / allergy is like partially in remission. I've healed so much that aggravator doesn't aggravate me in the same way. I still can't have a ton. I can't exactly eat gluten all day, every day, but I can have a little bit. And for me personally, that is completely emotionally related and very tied for me to anxiety. And healing my anxiety really healed my digestive issues, which really makes sense on a very simple level, right? When we're not in rest and digest mode, when our parasympathetic nervous system is not able to turn on into that rest and digest mode, we're going to have intestinal unrest. We're going to have pain or bloating or whatever that way it shows up for you is. And it's just super fascinating because for me, that was really linked to anxiety. And I can totally see that and feel that in my body. Like anxiety for me is tight, it's a holding, it's a constriction. And if I'm in a chronic constriction that's really located in my abdomen, how am I going to digest food in a way that feels like it's flowing and moving and easy? So healing my anxiety, which I will talk more about that at some point, really had such an impact on my ability to rest and digest and not have stomach issues anymore. Now, there's very few things that like truly aggravate my stomach, whereas I was in pain for like 10 years straight from the time when I was about 14 to when I was about 27. So honestly, over 10 years, about 13 years of chronic pain, chronic issues, and was really, really able to heal that from an emotional standpoint. And I don't know that that is true for everyone, but I do find a very repetitive pattern in that for women who are dealing with anxiety, especially anxiety, depression, stress. Those things have such an impact on the body and the digestive system, I think, in particular. And then the hormonal system and everything, because it's all deeply linked and deeply connected. So where I'm going with this is that as we begin to heal and go through all of these layers, we come back to the body to go into more subtle realms. And something I've been working on is just really kind of these guided meditations that I'm doing with a coach and learning through these practices, really learning to understand and map in the body sensation is coming up and what it feels like based on different mental stories or ideas or stimulation, and that connection between the mental realms, the emotional realms, and then the physical realms. And when I first started doing this, I was super hesitant to articulate what was happening in the body because it really didn't make sense to my mind, right? So I'm kind of like visualizing, I do a guided meditation and maybe some images come up and we're doing a visualization around the womb, like what colors are present, what objects are present, kind of really going into these um, hypnosis adjacent trance-like realms and bringing information back and then articulating it in the body and emotionally as one component, but then actually the felt sense of the body as another. So articulating both, right? So I've developed this ability to see patterns, but I was only able to do that by continuously practicing, beginning this practice of articulation that didn't make sense to me and that I honestly had a lot of resistance to at first because it didn't make sense to talk about, oh, I'm seeing red in the womb space and there's this ruby and it feels like a softening. It feels grounded. It feels held. It feels supported. It feels safe, right? Finding these words. And my brain honestly really resisted this experience and this practice. But what I've noticed is that I've been able to develop such a deeper awareness of my body and such a deeper trust of my experience, and therefore a deeper trust of myself, because I'm going again and again into this realm and naming things, bringing awareness, bringing this mind-body connection into being, creating these new neural pathways where now I'm able to access different parts of my body to create safety, to create stability, noticing like where I feel safe, where I feel grounded, and being able to tap into that place if I feel some other experiences coming on, that experience of anxiety, that experience of sensation coming up in kind of my chest or my throat, or like having this other experience that I'm also able to feel and articulate and name and be like, okay, I'm feeling tightness in my chest and my throat. I'm feeling a fluttery feeling that's related to anxiety for me. I'm feeling a constriction. I'm feeling limited. I'm feeling inhibited. I'm feeling fear. I'm feeling negative anticipation. And really learning to map these sensations, learning to map my body, map my experience, has developed so much trust in these things that at face value maybe didn't seem like they make sense. But then over time, you begin to really see these clear patterns of how your body likes to move, how your body is naturally being held, like what is happening in this moment, because there's a consistency, there's a pattern. You can see, oh, when I think about this, I have this constriction and this experience that we could call something like anxiety. Oh, when I want support around that, I can tap into my womb space. I can tap into this place that feels consistent and safe and deep for me. And you're really able to develop this very subtle yet profound and huge self-trust and relationship with yourself and your body. And that awareness brings so much change, so much opening, so much creation and ability to alchemize, to transform, to move from that state of anxiety into a state of peace with more ease, more fluidity, more awareness, more gentleness, more of everything. And it's just so cool and so powerful to develop that. So, my invitation is to create a practice, and I really do want to create some meditation recordings around this, to develop your own systems of recognition in the body, of following that subtlety, of going to these subtle, deeper layers and articulating them, understanding how to name things, to say things, especially when they don't make sense in the mind. Because I think the mind really resists this type of work because it wants it to fit inside these very small parameters. And the truth is that experience really doesn't fit inside small parameters, and it's different for each of us, and it's profound for each of us. And truly, the more I've just been able to lean into that and to trust that and to articulate that, it's built so much self-awareness and so much self-trust and so much self-resourcing. So I wanted to share this and just start to feel into your body when you're noticing an emotional expansion or contraction. Tap into the body, see if you can sit in stillness for just a few moments and really articulate the experience to yourself. What does it feel like? What's happening in the body? What's happening emotionally? And just noticing the story those are connected with and just building this experience, this ability to recognize and articulate. It's super powerful. Okay, thank you.